Sure.
Christine, are you
Please.
going to do an introduction?
Oh, sorry. I can. Yeah, I met Susan through B&H many years ago, and I've been following her work on Instagram and through B&H. I was even there. I don't know if you remember, Susan, the trip to Coney Island many years
Yes.
ago
Oh my
in the
gosh.
in
Forever
the
in
in
the rain and the
the
rain.
pouring rain, yeah, in Coney Island, which made it memorable. But Susan's work speaks for itself. If you haven't seen it, she's a prodigious. She had been a prodigious landscape photographer, but now has turned her many talents to light painting, and it's really astonishing. So, Susan, if you want to add anything, to take it away, the
No,
floor is
that's
yours.
great. Thank you. I'm curious how many people here have done light painting. Can I get like a hand raise?
What is
Okay, we got a few
you
hands.
should do by
Perfect.
that?
Awesome. I put my contact information to the group chat if anyone wants to reach out to me or check out what I do. I've included my Instagram handle. So I'd love to jump in and get started. I am from New York, like you guys, which I'm really excited about. So I do photo walks in New York City. Sometimes it's just, most of them are nighttime because I actually think the city is so special at night because there's less people and you can really capture unique images. So I do a lot of night photo walks, especially in the spring and in the summer. So if anyone, and I do light painting as well. So if anyone wants to join me, you guys should email me so I'll keep you guys informed on what's happening. Let me share my screen with you guys. Go to presenting mode real quick. Full screen. Great. Oh, awesome. So today we're going to be talking about mastering the dark arts with light painting. My name again, Susan Magnano, and my email is here. Let's go to the next page. So how many of you guys have ever arrived at a scene and seen this? You and 100 other photographers are waiting to capture a beautiful scene that you traveled across the country or even just got out of bed for. And you're thinking, this is going to be my time. I'm going to capture this unique shot. And you get there and everyone's there capturing the same shot. And you think, what could I do to get a unique shot here? And my mind would be like, well, maybe if I like get a little bit more to the left or go a little bit lower or shoot with a different angle. And I used to think it was all about the gear I had. I'd be like, oh, well, I have a good camera and maybe these people don't. But normally I see the people with the smartphone right next to me taking just as good of a shot as I'm taking. So it's no longer about the gear anymore. And it's no longer about putting yourself in the right position. Even these people, this is a beautiful Death Valley. Last year they had a storm come through and Manly Basin, or actually Badwater Basin became Manly Lake. So it was an amazing opportunity to photograph a lake in the middle of a salt flat. And you can see lots of Instagrammers are out here. Everyone's trying to get their shot. And I even thought, how can I get a unique shot? And the one thing that resonated with me the most was if I can't put myself in a different spot than these people, and I can't get a different angle and we're all shooting the same light, what could I do differently? Well, I came up with the idea that I would create my own light. Ooh, did it work? I can't, so I decided to come back at night, and at that time I decided to create my own light. So I can assure you that no one else got this shot except for me. And maybe people can replicate it. But the funny thing is with my light painting, sometimes I can't even replicate my own shots. So if they could, that would be pretty amazing. But what I've learned is um, to create unique shots nowadays, you really have to create everything about the picture. And the most important part of your picture is the light. So I like to go to places at night and create my own light. So the night is our blank canvas, and we are untethered by the limitations of daylight, meaning the placement of the sun and its angles and its shadows. We can transform the ordinary into the extraordinary. We can create our own reality out of the darkness. We can draw with light. We can illuminate what we choose. We can even create art that's beyond our imagination. Ooh, I think I skipped one. And we could go from capturing light to creating it. And I think that's the most important thing. Instead of capturing light, which is what all daytime photographers do, we are now choosing an opportunity to start with a blank canvas and create it. And even moonlight can work too. I truly feel like I'm an artist when I'm light painting. And the way we're going to do this is we're going to create unique images by using long exposures and light painting. So, are you guys ready to paint the night? Hope so. So,
Yeah.
what is light painting? Light painting is a photography technique when you use a light source to shine light on your subject or to use light to draw in your scene while doing an exposure. So, I've created a book. It's called The ABCDs of Light Painting. If you guys would like, you can scan this QR code right here or take a picture of it or even email me. I'm happy to send you guys this ebook. It is an abbreviated version of this presentation, so it's helpful if you don't want to take notes. I'm happy to share it with you. It's more like a guide, not quite an ebook, but it's like a guide to light painting. So it's like, I like it. It's helpful. So we're going to start off with the ABCDs. Okay. So A is for ambient. Ambient light is the existing light in your scene. So you have your first challenge of, are you exposing for the ambient or are you underexposing? So here I chose to expose for the ambient, which is the starlight and a little bit, I think it was only starlight. I don't even think there was a moon out yet. So I was able to expose for this, and this is my base exposure. But I'm going to show you an example where I exposed for the ambient, and this is my parents' backyard upstate New York. I don't want to see my neighbor's house. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to underexpose the ambient. So now all I see is the light painting. So if you're in a studio, you're obviously not going to expose for any of the light in the studio. You're going to underexpose the studio. So it's choosing whether you want to expose for the ambient or not. So that's your first choice when it comes to doing night photography. And when you're in the city, you're going to expose for the city lights. B is for the brightness, and brightness of your tools is what I'm referencing. So I use an assortment of tools from flashes to video lights to a lot of flashlights. And if you want to adjust the brightness, you can turn the power up on your tool. You can bring the light closer to your subject, or you can keep the light on for longer. When you're working in environments like New York City, then you're going to be turning your lights up brighter, because you have to think about it as you're compensating for your camera exposing for the environment, which is bright. So you need a bright light source to compete. But let's say you're out in Montauk where it's very dark and you're shooting, let's say, the Milky Way. You're actually going to have your camera's going to be very sensitive to light. So you're actually going to need a very dim light source, like a dim flashlight, so that it actually exposes properly, or else it'll just be blown out. So I just want you guys to start thinking about, when you're doing this light painting, what kind of tools you need and the different types of brightnesses you're going to need. C is for color. Since we're introducing our own light, let's introduce color. So here's the color wheel. I like to use contrasting colors. So in this picture, blue hour, I could have used a white light and that would have been fine, but instead I chose a nice warm orange light because of the color contrast, blue and orange, and that really made the car pop. So think about how you can choose colors to introduce storytelling. So we can make a subject stand out. We can create a narrative or use it for storytelling. We can even evoke a feeling. So if you look at these three witches, which one do you think is the good witch and which one do you think is the bad witch? Just based on the color. And if you guessed red was the bad witch, you guessed right. But even if you think about like Star Wars, we already have an idea that like the good guys are blue and the bad guys are red. You know, we already have an idea of what colors mean, so you can incorporate that into your photos. I do a workshop every year in outside of Las Vegas. I'm doing it again in March. If anyone would like to join me, I still have some spots available. And it's in this abandoned ghost town that is like an old movie set. And it's so many cool props to light paint. So here's a crashed airplane. So this is just using regular tungsten lights, creating a really natural scene. Then I use some purples and blues, again, using color contrast to create a different, edgier look. So just to show you guys how you can introduce color to tell a different narrative. D is for direction, and I'm talking about the direction and angle of light. So why do we do that? Because we want to create texture, shadows, and create impact. So if we look at this cowboy here, we have kind of broad lighting on his face, meaning he's well lit. And he kind of looks like he could be the sheriff or the good guy that's coming into town to save the day. Meanwhile, we rotate the light onto about 90 degrees, and now we're shooting into the shadow side, which is narrow lighting, and now he looks like he could be a criminal. He could be the bad guy or the villain. So even just thinking about the placement of your light can dictate the story or the narrative that you're trying to share.
Claro.
Another example, this is just a truck, and I had this little video light on the stand. You can kind of see it here. This is kind of like broad light. This is front light. See how nice the shadows are looking. This is backlight. This is from the other side. And for me, I don't know. I'm not really trying to tell a story. I was just trying to make this truck look cool. And obviously, I don't think this is the coolest angle because it's kind of right behind the camera. And I recommend never putting a light source right behind the camera because it's flat and it's boring light. But look how interesting the shadows are from this angle, or even from this angle from the front. So you're really looking, I like to shoot into the shadow side because it gives depth and texture. E is for the exposure, and I feel like this is where a lot of people have a hard time. So first, you're going to set your camera on manual mode or bulb mode because you want to have complete control. Then you're going to think about ISO, aperture, and shutter speed. And there's no complete recommendation for this because it all depends on the environment that you're in. But just as a starting point, I would say if you're in New York City, you can start off with ISO 100 because it's already pretty bright. You're going to be in a tripod, so you'll be able to do longer exposure. F8 will cut down some of those ambient light, and then you hopefully could do 10 seconds. So this is kind of just a starting point, and then you can adjust. If you're under a moonlight, it really depends on how bright the moon is, probably not full moon, but ISO 640, f5.6, and you could do a 20-second exposure. And my typical settings when I'm shooting under the stars is ISO 3200, 2.8, and 30 seconds. And that's really because I need to be that settings to actually see the stars. So that's kind of my starting point for the exposure. And then I have to think about my flashlights. I actually should incorporate this into my next slide, but I'm just going to share it with you. Flashlights are based on lumen. So that's why I recommend getting, actually G is the next slide, I think. Oh, not yet, but I'll get to the G. When I talk about flashlights, it's good to have a flashlight that has a variety of different settings. So I actually spend the most amount of money on my flashlights. I've spent everything from 40 to 80 to even $120. I know, it's crazy. My bag of flashlights is worth a lot of money. Hopefully, I always think like nobody knows how valuable like these 10 flashlights are. And some of them they don't even make anymore. That's the one thing, you find a flashlight you like and then they stop making it. But the one thing I want to say is when you buy a flashlight, look and see how many lumen it is. And lumen is the measurement they use for brightness. So like 10 to 50 lumen is what you need for when you're shooting the stars. And when you're in the city, you could be using 1800 to 2200 because that's a lot of brightness that you need to compete with your settings for the city. So if you're looking to invest in a flashlight, let me know. I have a guide on that. F is for focus. So again, you're going to set your camera up on a tripod. You're going to use your flashlight to illuminate your subject. You're going to put in autofocus, so the camera just finds the focus on the subject, and then you're going to put in manual focus. And the reason for that is if you don't put in manual focus, it's actually going to search and hunt for focus as soon as you're turn the light off. So once it's on manual focus, it's locked in. I have the model mark the ground where she's standing, so she knows like the basic, if she moves, she knows the basic spot where we focus to. But then again, I refocus every so often because there's nothing worse than taking gorgeous photos and then realizing that they're a little bit soft. This is the gear I use. I use Olympus when I'm doing my light painting, Olympus OM1. There's now an OM2 series, which is also very nice. I use a wide angle lens, probably 16 to 35. I love my Benro tripods. I use a remote trigger to trigger my camera so I can be triggering it and being behind my camera or be in the middle of the scene while I'm triggering it. I use drones, but not to take pictures, to actually light paint, which I'll get into. I use a flashlight to freeze my subject, and I actually use it in a really unique way. When I use a flash, I hand hold it, mainly because I don't like to carry light stands with me. And I use the little button on the back, and you hit the test button, and I just trigger it. So I'll put it in manual mode. I'll put it on like 1/8 power, and I'll just test it to see if that works. And I'll hit the little green button that's there, which turns red. and I fire a test shot, and I use it handheld, mainly because it's just convenient and the light stand's always in my way. This is a Nan Light Pavo tube, which turns a lot of different cool patterns. A Luxley fiddle, which they stopped making, so I need to take it off of here. But they do have a Luxley viola, which is a really nice low-level lighting that I use to light up my scenes. I'll get into that. I have a bunch of different flashlights, so check out my gear guide or email me for my gear guide because one just a new flashlight just came out that I started using. It's called the Ryu Light Painter flashlight that I recommend. And last but not least, the Nanlite T8 tube. So when we get into lighting tubes, you're going to notice that I use something called a T8 tube. It is a piece of plastic you can get at the hardware store that used to protect lights. Nanlite caught wind that all these light painters were using this kind of tool to do light painting, and they made a tool specifically for light painters in the shape of the TA tube, and that you can actually use LEDs, and it has LED power, so you can put any color in it. So it's really an amazing tool. You'll see what it looks like in a minute. Finally, we're reaching the end of my short alphabet. But H, how to find a good location. First, you're going to scout your location during the day. You're going to look for good compositions, watch for light interference. And what I mean by that is if the road turns and a car is going to turn with its headlights and shine right onto where you're setting up, you don't want to be there. Also, if there's lights on the ground that shine up, like in like a Gantry State Park, there's these lights that you wouldn't even know are there, and then all of a sudden the sun sets and all these lights start shining up from the ground. You don't want to be standing right in front of those either. So look for lights that might not work in your scene. Also look on the ground for any trip hazards and be aware of basically all safety hazards. I use photo pills a lot to create my compositions. So when I'm in a dark area, like a place where I can see the stars, I'll use photo pills to find out where the moon will rise or where the Milky Way will rise. And here you can kind of see it behind the text. This is the Milky Way core rising. So I had found this ridge line and I convinced this couple to come with me in the middle of the night to come stand on this ridge line and stand behind in front of the Milky Way as the Milky Way core rose. And I was able to create this picture. So we're going to dive in now. So I know I didn't finish the alphabet, but we don't got time to finish it. And I want to jump in and show you guys some examples. So this is my daytime shot. I scouted this location at the ghost town and I thought this is cool. And then I took out my photo pills, and this is the photo pills night AR. So I see here that the North Star is going to align right on the edge of this gas station. So I said, hey, that's pretty cool. If I come back here at night, I can set up the same composition. And I know if I do star trails, I can actually create a composite with the star trails and my light painting. So I came back and gorgeous. This was the moonlight. So it ended up being a full moon. And the full moon was creating this beautiful light. And I think most people would have been like, hey, that's pretty nice. I got the stars, I got the moon. I'm good. Let's go. But not me. I want everyone to think about how they can add their own uniqueness into each photo. How you can go from taking a photo to creating a photo. Remember now, guys, we're adding our own light in the picture so we can get unique photos. So here we are, is we have this beautiful car, and there's a lot of light everywhere because it's a long exposure, but there's a lot of darkness in this garage. So what I did was I took my colorful RGB flashlight. It's called Ants on the Melon. This is a time lapse of me running around, and I light painted the inside of the garage and inside the windows. And then I was able to create this picture. And I thought, hey, that's pretty cool. I did like a bunch of different types with different colors inside. And then I set my camera, I kept my camera in the same spot and I let it run the sun. I think the moon had set, not the sun. The moon maybe had set. I don't remember. Let's take a look. But I was able to do star trails. Actually, I don't think the moon set because you could still see the light over here. So the moon hadn't set. It just, I wasn't pointing towards the moon, so you could still see these stars. So this is about a 40-second star trail. The only pictures you'll see that are composites are ones that involve stars. And if not, everything is done in one take. So you don't see me running through the picture because I typically wear black and then I'm not illuminating myself. So if there's no light on me and I'm not standing in one space, you won't see me. Also, I like to put the lights in front of me when I'm doing the light painting. So that's kind of just how you do a scene here. So here's another take on it, different setup, stars, different light painting, different night. And one more take, just to show you different angles, different compositions. So here's another example. Oh, what happened to the video? Here's another example, and this is again with moonlight. I think the moon is lighting it exactly how I would have liked it to. It's kissing the rim, it's looking, I put a light inside here and I put a light inside the barn. So again, this is called low level lighting. It's when you put a light inside a place and you just leave it on and you put it at a very small amount. So this is at 2% brightness inside these places because it's illuminating the whole time. Sometimes when I'm doing my light painting, I have a 30-second exposure, but I'm not shining lights the whole time. But these ones, because they're called low level and they're on the whole time, they have to be so little brightness just so you can see it in the picture. And it kind of think about how it's just burning in the whole time. So this is a pretty cool picture. But again, I thought, what could I do to do something interesting? So you're going to see how I took a flashlight and I painted light all around the car, illuminating what I wanted. Here's a little light spill. And I went around to light it up. So my technique here was, this is kind of the tool. I think I have a different tool. I'll show you guys. It is basically this, but it has a very skinny beam of light. And I use it to kind of paint right along the rim. And I put it pretty low brightness because I'm so close to the subject. And I literally contour the subject. And this is what it looked like. So just showing you how you could go from something like this, which I thought was pretty neat, to something like this. And this just took a couple shots. The moon was again out lighting up the rest of the scene. And it's actually interesting. I came back and I shot this same scene without the moon. And it makes such a difference because the only light in my scene now is my light. So it's way more contrasty. Having the moon out actually softens my light painting a little bit. In a way, it dulls it down because it's not as prominent, but it also helps. So it could be, depends on what you like. If you want your light painting to be the only thing in the scene, then you got to go out when there's no moon or less moon. So the reason why I got into light painting was because when I started doing star photography, this is what I was getting. And I was like, wow, this is really neat, but it was kind of boring. I'm not gonna lie. I love looking at the stars, of course, but I felt like I wasn't doing much. I wasn't participating. I just sat there looking around and waiting for the exposure to happen, then taking another one. So as I'm sitting here at Balance Rock in Moab, a car drives by and illuminates Balance Rock. And I was kind of annoyed. I said, dude, you're ruining my shot. And when I looked at it, I was like, hey, that's not that bad. And then I go, okay, well, what if I illuminate this tree? And because I knew about portrait lights, I know that you want to shoot into the shadow side. And if I rim light it, this is with the headlamp, guys. This is like, I didn't even know what I was doing. I just thought, well, now I have a silhouetted tree and now I have a rock that's lit up. Now let me light up this tree. And I thought, wow, this is so much better and tells such a better story, a little bit later in the day. But in the night when the book goes up higher, I go, this is a lot better than in the other one. I like participating in my photos. And that was the start of it all. Now I even use a drone to light paint. So this is my newest passion, is taking my drone out in locations that it's okay to, which there aren't many nowadays. And being in New York, there's so much, I mean, drone night photography's got a bad rap right now. So I don't really take it out in New York at all. And it wasn't me doing all those crazy drone lights, just so you know. That wasn't me. But this is out west where there's nobody here, maybe some campers in the distance. But I want to show you the power of having a tool like this. And I wish you could do it everywhere, but you can't. So you have to find it, be very choosy. But look how I can use this drone. And I'm just using the landing light of the drone, which is the bottom light that you can turn on remotely, and putting it on the subject and creating these side lights. So this is what I would normally get. And now the drone is here, it lights up this side. I put the drone over here, it lights up this side. And you can really feel like you're like a powerful god of light, putting light everywhere you want. So that is my newest passion. Does someone have a question? Okay. This is another example, not with drone light painting, but this is regular shot. This is a boot rock out in one of my workshops. I do a workshop in Trona Pinnacles and in Alabama Hills. And, this is accent light. I put a light back here, low level lighting on for the whole time, just lighting up the boot so you can actually see it. I came here once, I was like, what are people talking about? And then I was like, oh, that's the boot inside the arch. Okay. So we got the Milky Way core, we got the boot, and then I thought, what else can we do? And then I threw the drone up and was able to now get some texture on the rock. So just showing you again the tools that you can do. You can even use the drone to light right. So this is a technique where you put the drone in your scene and you're able to do different shapes. The circle one is one of the more easiest ones because you can have the drone focus, use a point of interest focus and circle around a point, and then it kind of automatically does it. But it's still so cool. It almost feels like we're on a different planet, right? And these are some other shapes and stuff. I'm actually doing a presentation for Night Photo Summit coming up in a week or so on exactly this drone light painting. So my drone light painting has become next level. This is really beginner stuff, but it's just such a fun passion of mine to show you all the different things you can do and where you can put the light source and how you can do so many interesting things with it. And it is dangerous. I mean, you just got to be safe flying at night. Not that I mean, it's not safe for your drone. Everyone else is safe, but just don't crash it into anything, you know. I go to really remote places, so no one's going to get hurt with the drone. Here's another example of light painting. This is again using photo pills to see the North Star would be right over this sign. This is from my workshop out in Nevada. And I said, okay, perfect. I'm going to come back and I did the star trails separately. And then I said, okay, what am I going to do with this sign? And because it looks like an old marquee sign, I thought, let me illuminate the marquee sign. And this is what I did. I had that flashlight. It's called Ants on a Melon. RGB critter, and it turns all different colors. So I was able to make it look like the sign was illuminated
Mm,
with each color.
very cool.
And then it became this. So I put the two pictures together and then I had this interesting shot. So 85 seconds. And then the Star Trails was obviously a different composite. So I know some of you guys are thinking, hey, you know, I don't have all these fancy tools, but I'm sure you have a flashlight. So this is what I love to do. It's called just light writing. And I'm taking a flashlight and I'm writing on the sidewalk like it's basically chalk just to get a unique vantage point. Like I do these Brooklyn workshops all the time. And I challenge myself, what could I do differently this time that wouldn't be the same? And you know, every time you look at Manhattan's a little bit different. So there's always that element of capturing something a little bit different. But then I think, what are the things that I can do? So, I mean, not many people have this picture. So what I did was I took my flashlight and I drew on the ground just like chalk. And you just make sure not to stand in the way of your camera and the drawing. Your back will hurt, trust me, mine did. But it was worth it. You know, I was able to write this cute little love letter, and you just have to remember the spacing. And you could write anything, you know, and this is just a unique take on it. And this is something you guys could do tomorrow night. And I expect you guys to do it, even if it's cold out. So send me the picture. It's your homework. Um, Also, you don't need a fancy flashlight even. You could just use your speed light. And I'm sure 95% of you guys have a speed light. So to do this technique, I take my speed light, I put it in manual, and then I power it all the way down to the lowest setting because I'm going to be turning it back at the camera. And then I take it and I imagine I'm going to flash it. And I hit that little green light that turns red, and I flash it and I make it in the shape of a C and then an R and then an E. And I take one step in between each letter to create the space. And you could even do writing with just the flash. Because I'm facing the camera, I actually had to do it opposite, but you could always write it opposite and then flip it in post, but I like to do it. So you just have to do it opposite. Once you do a letter, you'll understand that you actually have to reverse it. But
You're doing this all in 30 seconds?
yeah,
Wow.
it goes like this, pop, 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 pop. And that's why you also have to have it on the least powerful setting, because if it's on a bright setting on the flash, it won't recycle fast. This is a picture that, again, all I used was a flash. I have this little this model out in Las Vegas, and she wants to be a superhero. So I said, okay, let's put you in three different positions like Charlie's Angels. So she stood in one, I flashed her. She moved one step, flashed her, and moved another step, and I flashed her. And I just moved with her. You know, I flashed her from the right, then from the center, and then from the right and from the left, or whatever. You guys can tell. But a couple things I want to point out here is if you look at her head over here, it's opaque. It's like see-through almost because she didn't stand there the whole time. Also, because she wasn't standing in front of a dark background. So the sky started to burn in when she wasn't there. So if you want your subject to really pop, put them in front of darker subjects. If you put them in front of brighter subjects, the light painting might not show as much. Here's another example from my Trona workshop. We had a model slash dancer come and she struck 4 different poses and I flashed her each time. And this is what it looked like. So really cool. She's a great jumper, right?
Mhm.
And was able to capture that one. So not all light painting you actually need lights for. You can use existing lights. So this is the Pepsi Cola sign, which I'm sure some of you guys are familiar with in Gantry State Park. And this is a type of light painting style called kinetic light painting. It's when you point your camera at existing lights and you move your camera or your lens. For this one, I just zoomed my camera lens out. So it's a 4-second exposure. If you want something to be burnt in longer, you let it linger in and then you move faster and then you have more of the zoomed out effect. It's really fun technique. New York City is the perfect place to do it, whether you're doing the city skyline or what. This one is a technique, I call it the bin effect. My student Ben and I were together when we created this one, and it's just really turning your barrel of your lens after every second. So let it sit, turn, let it sit, turn, let it sit, turn, let it sit, turn. And then that's how I was able to get the Radio City to burn in so clearly, because I moved it and let it sit for a second. All right, guys. So now we're getting into the fun stuff, the light drawing. So everything so far we've been doing, except for a couple drone shots, we've been just painting in our scene. But now we're going to be talking about how do we illuminate, how do we create our own illuminations? So these are some tools I use when I'm light drawing. I use parchment paper and basically I roll it up into like a little wand and I stick a flashlight in it, a soda bottle, stick a flashlight in it, sparklers. I'm sure you guys have some of those left over from the 4th of July. Holiday lights, don't put them away just yet. Glow sticks, I know you guys rave, so I know you guys have your collection. And of course, the T8 tubes, which is something you can get. It's a little bit random. You get it at the hardware store, like at Home Depot. They're in the like, I think it's a halogen light that goes inside. It's basically the container that protects the lights, and they cost like $4 to $6. And they're long. They're about 4 feet tall. And I mean, you stick a flashlight in it, and you have a lightsaber. So it is one of the coolest things. Eric Perret created this type of photography. If you don't know him, definitely check out his work. Him and Kim Henry, which is his partner. She's the beautiful dancer on the top of the sand dune, and he's drawing circles around her. If you're not familiar with their work, Google it. They're so talented, and he's actually the inspiration for me to get into light painting. So he's the one who started doing this T8 tube, and it's really cool. You can buy these for so cheap, and you could even put some colored paper or colored gels inside and then make them colorful. Lastly, this is the tool I know you guys all have is your smartphone. So if you go on your smartphone, Google rainbow pattern or rainbow graphic, you can get something like this to pop up. And then all I did here was I smeared it, I did a long exposure, 10 seconds. I smeared it with the face of the camera facing towards, I mean, the face of the phone facing the camera and was able to create a cool pattern like this. I mean, you can do anything. I've even Googled letters and then wrote out a letter, like a happy birthday sign. It took me forever to write this like happy birthday sign for my brother using letters I illuminated with graphics I found and put on my phone. So anything is possible. This, I think, is the most underrated tool is your smartphone because it illuminates and you can put anything on it. So let's get started. Remember the ABCs first? We expose for the ambient. Here is the ambient, the stars. B for brightness, I'm using a low level light, so I have it at 2% brightness, and I chose C for color red because we have a blue sky. Why not do a red church? And D, direction of light was just up, up, up. Nothing really significant here. But then I thought, what could we do to make it more original? Let's add some people. So now we're going to get into the portraits.
Maybe.
I added this couple here with that T8 tube, and it was funny, I had a piece of green tape at the end of it. I wasn't even thinking that was going to do anything, but that is what happened here. I had a piece of green tape, And this was just a test shot, so you can actually see my feet on the bottom because I didn't move. I was just like, oh, did it work? You know? So I show you guys this to show you that I do get caught sometimes in my photos, but most of the time I move out of the way so I don't get caught. So this was kind of the test shot, and I thought, okay, that works, but what can we do to make it better? And you'll see I start to incorporate the light tools here so you can see and the settings. So there's a lot of things to explain in each photo, but I like to show you guys a good variety so you can actually see the light tubes, the flashlight, and the low level lighting all happened here. I'm going to incorporate another element. So we moved a couple out. We did the light tube, now a red light tube with a tissue, which created a paper towel or something that at the end that created this white rim. And this now is that speed light. Remember how I wrote the word create and I pointed it towards the camera? Now I have it pointing towards the camera and I'm flashing it to create like a lightning bug effect. So this is two people. This is during a workshop. I'm doing this circle and I have someone running through the frame flashing this. So not every exposure is done by me. I mean, done only me. Most of them are, but some of them aren't. And I'll tell you when they are, when I have a team working with me. So silhouettes are great, but I like to now light up my subject. So you'll see how I start to do that as well. Here's another example. If you guys are fans of B&H, I did a B&H masterclass on light painting. I've sent you guys a link. If you guys are interested in my ebook, I also send you a link to my web content where I did a masterclass for B&H, and this was a part of the series. So this is a barn, and we decided what would we do with the barn. So we exposed for the A for ambient, B for the brightness. I put two for colors, a red and a blue for contrasting colors, and the direction of light was important here. I put it all the way back here so the light would skim. So I'm actually shooting into the shadowy side of the ridges here. And then we thought, what else can we do? Let's add a cowboy. Let's add a smoke machine, because why the heck not? He's even smoking for real. He smoked, so it was just a cool shot, and the smoke machine with I added an extra white light in here to illuminate the smoke, and now we have a whole story. You know, think about just before it was just like a cool, barn. Now we have a cowboy. Another take on it. We moved the cowboy and now we started adding rim light. So we brought the speed light. And the reason for this was it started raining. I was like, are you kidding me? We're like trying to film the rest of this production and it's raining. So I said, well, maybe we light the rain from behind. So I came over here and remember I handhold all this. I go behind him and I light him from here because I want to get this nice rim light. And then I came from this side because I wanted to get this nice side light. I didn't light the front of him because I thought that would be boring. He'd look like a country music star. Here I wanted him to look like an ominous character. And then I took the tube, and did a circle around him to separate him from the background. Another example here, I showed you guys this at the beginning. This is at that Manly Lake, which is the Badwater Basin. I'll skip ahead since I showed you that one. But this is just using two tubes, just talking about it. I had two tubes in my hand. One was red and one was blue. And I walked through, I guess you could see me. This is me walking and splashing around in the water. And then this is me splashing around. Oh man, it was so salty. That water was so salty and messy. But yeah, you could see the technique. And I'm just doing some circles around. Here's another example. So now you can see how I flash my subject. Now this is going to be one where you see the flash on her face. I shoot with the OM system because you can actually see your exposure as it's happening in real time. This is Burning Man, by the way, if anyone's ever been. I think you're all burners, right? I can tell there's some burners in the house. So it's a really cool festival in the middle of the desert. And it's a great place to light paint. And here is the picture. It took 30 seconds to create it. And what's cool, that's why I use the OM system. You get to see it happen in real time. So this is the picture I was able to create. So just to recap, I took the flash and I lit her face. And then I did the tool behind her. I do like to light my subjects up first because they're like more present. They're not like thinking about what they're going to have for dinner. They're not like bored, and it gets their expression to be right. Here's another example of me doing a recording. This is with the light whip. So this is a tool I have, and you can see how it works in real time. So I'm really showing you all this so you guys can understand how it works. And this is what it looked like. I missed the flash in the video, but I flashed her first and then I created the light trails around her. Here's a example in New York City. Some of you guys may know where this is. This is like the Upper West Side. I saw this from the highway and I go, oh my gosh, I want to shoot in those arches. That looks so cool. And then I get there and there's so much ambient light. There's all these lampposts. And I was like, oh my gosh, is this even going to work? Because if there's too much ambient light on your subject, it's illuminating them the whole time and you might get a little bit of a blur and then they won't look so sharp. But what I did here was I put my model with the, see how far away they all are? So I put her with one close to her head behind her. So now she's facing into the darker side and it's rim lighting her. And I put this little red light on the ground because there really wasn't much light appearing on the roof. And this is what it looks like. So first I flash her and then I get my flash tube out so you can see this happening. And I have it on the strobe mode. I'm doing little circles around her. And you'll notice I'm going to come in front of her because I wanted to give the illusion of like atmosphere, but you got to be really choosy about that because you don't want to overwrite in front of your subject. It works when it's the strobe mode. So see how this light created this nice rim light? Her face looks perfectly sharp because she was facing into the darkness and I strobed her. And then this is the light painting around her. And this is the red light up here from the light source I had. So I know a lot of people say I live in a bright environment like New York City, but there's still dark environments that you can still get away with. Like I shoot in Central Park all the time because I think it's like one of the darkest places. And even with the city skyline, I just always put my subjects' faces into the darkness. Here's an example of Mexico. I do a workshop in Mexico where I put the light in front of her because I wanted to look like a Day of the Dead inspired picture. So I used the tube and I put it in front of her. I did a circle around her and I flashed her at the beginning or the end. Here's another example. So I have now, this is the Nanlite T8 tube. It was so windy. Look how windy it is that day. And I'm doing the circles behind her. And what's cool about this tool is it changes colors. So we're able to create this one. You know, I flashed her to get her sharp, and then I use this tube and obviously the neon light and the flash. I mean, it's such a cool tube because it changes colors and you can do things like this, things like this. All right, so now we're getting into a little bit more technical stuff. So here, this is what I was telling you about. Remember when I said I light painted that car? This is actually the tool I used. So what it is it's called a portrait light. It's made by lightpaintingbrushes.com, but I made my own too. It is a PVC pipe with a slit cut through, so only light comes through the slit. So why you do that is it's such a defined beam of light, it's not going to spill everywhere. So here I lit her face up and I had a tube and I put lights on the background. So I had a green light here, a purple light here, and a blue light here. And just to create, and then the tube was, it was actually a mistake. I'm not gonna lie. I had a tube, but I had it upside down. So I put the flashlight in the wrong end and the light didn't go through the tube. But hey, it still illuminated cool behind her. And she was making a cool expression. Here is steel wool. So what this is a piece of steel wool, like a Brillo pad, in the middle of a whisk, and the whisk is attached to a chain or a rope. And when you light it on fire, it starts to spark a little bit, but when you spin it is when it really goes crazy, and you're able to create pictures like this. So this is on that Manly Lake when it was, yeah, I don't recommend doing this where you can catch things on fire. Do it where there's a lot of water. And again, I flashed her so you could see her face. This is an example in a workshop in Las Vegas that I do, so you can see it happening in real time. I flashed my subjects and moved around them. So we look like crazy people. I'm not gonna lie, we look really weird, but this is the kind of cool stuff you can come up with. And you can tell it's pretty bright. There's lights, but we have them facing into the darkness, you know? And I wanted to get this like fairy tale look with the colors and the little kid blowing the fairy dust. This is something. I don't know why it's not working, but here's an example of using that portrait light. So the reason why I use that light that has a small beam of light is because I don't want light to spill all over the scene. So I wanted the light to paint on her face like so and not spill all over the airplane. So first I light her, and then there was some ambient light in the back. Here's another example of that. So first I light her, I had a purple light back here, I had a blue light facing over here, and I light her and I don't flash her. So I use the flash a lot when I'm in the city because I don't have the luxury of long exposures. Here, it's completely dark. I'm controlling all the lights. So if I do a 30-second exposure and she moves in the darkness, it won't be as bad as her looking unsharp in the city because there's constant lights on her all the time. Here's an example of what it looks like when I do fire. So that was the portrait light. You see how I started and I lit her up from the ground to the top. This is what it looks like. I put the fire around her. And this is a fiber optic brush from lightpaintingbrushes.com. Again, if you message me on my gear guide, I will send you all the links so you can look into all the fun tools I use. And this is what it looked like in the end. And again, we had lights shining on the airplane the whole time in the background. Here's another example like that. I light painted her face. I did the fire and with the fiber optics. So this is what this looks like with the red gel, the flashlight, and the fiber optics. So this is one of my favorite ones. It is just a plexiglass blade. I cut out, my brother actually made this for me, a piece of plexiglass, glued it into this holder and with the flashlight. And this is in the front of a loading dock in New York City. And it's just me dancing around, creating and just like making something that doesn't exist in reality. And I just said, oh, that was really nice. And I go, let me try and do it again. Nope, I can never do that pattern again. It's what's the beauty of creating is like, you do it one time and you just have to love it. And then maybe you can recreate it, but sometimes you can't. And I think that's what's amazing about the uniqueness of it. I can't even replicate it sometimes. So this is me. This is basically a self-portrait. I'm in there. You don't see me because I'm moving around, but I just want to challenge you, like, you don't need fancy scenes. You don't need even fancy lights, a flashlight, a piece of parchment paper, just dancing in front of your of your house. You know, you can create interesting pictures like this. So to recap, remember the ABCDs of light painting. You create light to reveal your subject. Wear black, bring friends because it's more fun. Experiment and enjoy creating, and put the you in your unique photos. I'll be doing a bunch of luminescent portrait. I'm doing a bunch of luminescent portrait retreats, but one is in Nevada. It's in March. If you guys are going to WPPI, it's a wedding and portrait photography conference. It's right after that. If you want to tag that on to that. I'm also doing them in New York City in March and in April. So I'd love to even create a little get together. Maybe we do a photo walk with all the members of this camera club. That'd be really fun. And we could do it maybe somewhere in Manhattan in Central Park. I do workshops all over the world. I'll be in Dolomites, Slovenia, Bolivia. I'm actually in Yellowstone right now. I just flew in. I'm doing a Yellowstone workshop right now. But if you guys want to even, I do coaching. So if you guys want to build your photography business or like get a grip on editing or just learn how to light paint, I'm happy to work with you guys and see what we can do. So here's my information. Does anyone have any questions? You've been so silent.
Susan,
Yes.
two things.
Sure.
All the colors that you use, I take it, are from multicolored lights of some kind, flashlights or just stable lights. Is that correct?
So I'll go back to my gear page. So I use one flashlight that's really cool. So it depends. Sometimes I use a white light and then I use modifiers that have color. So you can use colorful gels and such. Oh, wrong one, wrong gear page. Other times I use this RGB colorful flashlight. So sometimes I use tools that light up colorfully and other times I use, actually, I guess I don't have it here. The RGB critter. It's a newer flashlight for me, but it's a flashlight that turns a bunch of different colors. So I do both. Sometimes I use tools that are colorful, like this is colorful, and then this is colorful, but this is a white light. Actually, it's colorful too, so I take it back. So sometimes it's my light source and sometimes it's the tools that go on them.
Or just one other quick question. When I was doing this after one of your workshops, I got the tube and I put the kinds of flashlights you described, and I was not getting enough light to really fill the tube with one, and I put one on the other end, and it still never gave me that diffuse, even light throughout the whole length of the tube. So have times changed, or what was I doing wrong?
So two things, it could be the flashlight. So curious to see which flashlight you were using. Maybe it wasn't bright enough Also, maybe you need parchment paper. So just having the tube alone, the light just like flies out of it and then it doesn't have anything to bounce off of. So what I'll typically do is I'll put a piece of tape, like a piece of tape with white reflection inside on one side of it. So then it looks like, do I have it here? I don't think I brought them in, but it's just a piece of like, it could be gaffer's tape just on one side of the tube. And the gaffer tape I recommend to be white, whatever tape it is, like a thick white tape. So then when the light is inside the tube, it's bouncing forward off that white background. Also, if you put like parchment paper inside, then it's another thing that catches the light. If it's just a clear tube, then it just disperses too easily.
I put the tape on one side and it
Okay.
didn't really help a lot. I mean, I just couldn't get it to really work, but
Send me
I'll
your
try it.
setup. Send me some, if you have it still, send me what you're working with. And a
Okay,
picture, and
I will
I'll
try.
take a look at it. And then it also could have been your settings. Maybe you needed what type of environment we're shooting. We're shooting dark enough. Was maybe your flash was at the brightest setting? You know, was the background too bright that you needed to make your settings more exposure? So try a darker background and see if then you see it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Good question. Any questions, guys? Anyone else want to share their experiences?
Is your workshop in New York going to be at your website?
Yes. So message me because I don't have it listed yet because I'm out of town for the next like month and a half. I'm going to Norway after I'll be home for a week. Maybe the thing is it's the weather is not great in New York, so it won't be until like March, or April when the weather's a little bit nicer and people want to be outside. But yes, it'll be, I'd love for you to come so then we can really, I love for people to bring their own tools so we can really perfect how to use them, and see what's going on there.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
Who's gonna go out and light paint tomorrow? Come on, let's see, raise your hands. You can even light paint in your kitchen or your living room. Yes, Dudley. You could I do it all the time in my bedroom. I turn off all the lights and then, or in my, more like a bigger space, like a living room. And then I just do I practice all the time. I mean, they're not like portfolio pieces, but they're really fun. And you get to see how your tools work, in the settings.
Okay.
Anyone have any other questions? Christine,
Yeah,
she's like,
I have
"No."
a comment, I guess. Um, just doing intentional camera movement at night in the city, and you create all this, seems like a poor boy's way of approaching what you're doing.
Uh, yeah,
And I think you sort of hinted at that a little bit.
you know what? It is being creative. It's creating a unique photo. So, I mean, everyone has a picture of the, Empire State Building, but do you have a picture of the Empire State Building where it's zoomed out? Like it's just, I don't think it's a poor man's, I think it's creating your own version of it. And sometimes I think the way to do that is to experiment with time and experiment with motion and light. So I think those are like the three components to create unique pictures.
But moving the zoom lens was something I've never done or never thought of. So that was
I would
pretty cool.
recommend, if you have, to be honest, the best way to use it is if you have a longer zoom lens. So I would say if you have something that is like a 24 to 105 is a great range because you can go really close at 105 and go all the way to 24. Like I have a 24 to 70 and the effect is just okay. And the 70 to 200 is okay, good, but you're too close. So, but having something that can be like even like a 16 to like 50 is great because I think actually 24 to 105 is the best because then you could really be at 105 and zoom all the way out to 24 and you get a really interesting effect.
Very cool.
Any other questions for Susan?
A lot of food for thought, Susan. A lot of food for
Well,
thought.
I'd love to see you guys all even
Yeah.
like do a photo walk with you guys in the spring. If you guys want to get together, we could do some. I do a lot in New York, just in Central Park, World Trade Center. I do a walking tour, and then Brooklyn Bridge Park is always beautiful for sunset and to night photography. So I specialize in night stuff, but I love doing day stuff too. I just like how you can mess with time easily, at nighttime. Even sunrise at the Brooklyn Bridge is fun. So Maybe we could talk about doing something, a fun little gathering of whoever wants to get together and do some experimenting.
Great.
Sounds good.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Susan.
Yes,
It was a
Susan, thank you.
Wonderful
Susan.
Really
presentation.
interesting. Thank
Great
you.
stuff.
Yeah,
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you, guys.
thanks for all the
Thank you.
resources, Susan. too.
Very
Thank you.
creative.
You're
Very
Thank you,
welcome.
Susan. Lot
I
to
look
think
forward to
about.
seeing your pictures.